Cedar Creek, a town like countless others, where the rhythms of life were once predictable, where neighbors greeted each other with a sense of shared security. But even in such seemingly tranquil places, the potential for darkness exists. And in Cedar Creek, that darkness wears a badge. Officer Donovan, a cop, sworn to protect, but who has chosen to be something else entirely. He is a predator in uniform, a figure who exploits the very authority he is meant to uphold. His presence is not a source of comfort, but a constant, gnawing unease. He is the architect of a quiet terror, a disruptor of the peace that Cedar Creek once held dear. The illusion of safety is a fragile construct. It relies on the unspoken understanding that those in positions of power will exercise their authority with integrity. But what happens when that understanding is shattered? What happens when the guardians of peace become the agents of fear? This is not a tale of distant empires or grand conspiracies. This is a story that unfolds in the heart of an ordinary town, where the seeds of injustice are sown with a deliberate, corrupt hand. We begin not with a sudden explosion, but with a slow, corrosive process. It is the story of how a single individual, armed with the power of the law, can systematically dismantle the foundations of a community. It is a story of how the system designed to protect can be twisted into a tool of oppression. And it is a story that begins on an otherwise unremarkable evening, an evening that would forever alter the fate of Cedar Creek and expose the rot that had taken hold. Officer Donovan's patrol car, a black beast of metal and tinted glass, idled at the curb. The engine's low rumble, usually a sound of reassurance in Cedar Creek, now vibrated with a different kind of energy. The street was quiet, the houses dark, save for the warm glow emanating from Dr. Wright's residence. It was a picture of peaceful domesticity, a stark contrast to the storm about to break. Donovan stepped out, his boots hitting the pavement with a deliberate, heavy thud. He moved with an air of practiced menace, the kind that came from years of exploiting the power his uniform afforded him. He approached Dr. Wright's door, his hand resting casually on his belt, near his service weapon. A firm knock echoed through the quiet street. Dr. Wright opened the door, her expression a mix of surprise and polite inquiry. "Officer, is everything all right?" "Everything will be, Doctor," Donovan said, his voice a low, gravelly drawl. "I'm here on a report of disturbance." "Disturbance? I'm afraid I don't understand. I've been home all evening." Dr. Wright's voice was calm, but her posture stiffened slightly. "That's not how it appears," Donovan said, his eyes scanning the interior of the house, lingering on the hallway behind her. "I've received complaints of excessive noise, late-night visitors, and other matters." "Other matters?" Dr. Wright raised an eyebrow. "Officer, I assure you, there's been no noise, no visitors. I've been working late." Donovan smirked, a cruel twist of his lips. "Funny, that's not what my information suggests." He took a step forward, invading her personal space. "Perhaps we should take a look around, just to be certain." "Officer, I object to this. You have no warrant, no probable cause." Dr. Wright's voice remained steady, but there was an edge of steel beneath the calm. "Probable cause? I'm standing right here, Doctor. That's all the cause I need." Donovan pushed past her, entering the house without invitation. He moved with a practiced arrogance, his eyes darting, his hands searching. He pulled open drawers, peered into rooms, his actions a deliberate violation. "Officer, this is harassment," Dr. Wright stated, following him. Donovan paused, pulling a small plastic bag from his pocket. He turned to Dr. Wright, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "What's this, Doctor? Looks like a controlled substance." He dropped the bag onto the kitchen counter, the contents clearly visible. "Care to explain?" Dr. Wright's eyes widened, but her expression remained composed. "That's not mine. You planted that." "Planted? Now, Doctor. That's a serious accusation." Donovan chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "But then, you're in a serious situation." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "You know, Doctor, it's a shame. A woman of your reputation, caught with this. But accidents happen. Sometimes, things get misreported. Sometimes, people make mistakes." He paused, letting the implication hang in the air. But then, we're all reasonable people, aren't we? We can come to an understanding. Dr. Wright met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. There will be no understanding. You can take your planted evidence and leave my house. Donovan's grin faded. You sure about that, Doctor? Dr. Wright wasn't just a resident of Cedar Creek. She was its heart. Her medical practice was a beacon of hope, a place where patients found not just treatment, but genuine care. Mrs. Henderson, a longtime resident with chronic arthritis, often recounted how Dr. Wright had spent extra time explaining her condition, adjusting her medication, and offering words of encouragement that went beyond a typical doctor's visit. She doesn't just treat the illness, Mrs. Henderson would say, her voice filled with warmth. She treats the person. Children adored her. She volunteered at the local school, giving talks on health and safety, always with a smile and a gentle touch. Even the most rambunctious kids would listen attentively, drawn to her calm, reassuring presence. Neighbors spoke of her kindness, her willingness to lend a hand. When the Petersons' house was damaged in a storm, Dr. Wright was the first to arrive with hot meals and offers of help. She organized a community fundraiser, rallying the town to support the family. Cedar Creek, before Donovan's arrival, was a place where doors were left unlocked, where children played in the streets until dusk, where a sense of shared trust permeated the air. It was a place where people felt safe. Dr. Wright was a vital part of that feeling. She represented the best of Cedar Creek, a symbol of its community spirit and its unwavering commitment to caring for its own. The sudden intrusion of Donovan into her home was a jarring disruption of that peace. It was a violation not just of her personal space, but of the town's collective sense of security. The fabricated accusations, the planted evidence, were not just an attack on Dr. Wright, but an attack on the very fabric of Cedar Creek. The town had always prided itself on its sense of community, its ability to look after its own. Now, that sense of security was shattered. The feeling of safety, once taken for granted, was replaced by a gnawing unease. The actions of one man had cast a shadow over the entire town, threatening to erode the very foundations of their peaceful existence. The quiet streets, once a source of comfort, now held a sense of unspoken dread. Donovan's actions were not isolated incidents. They were part of a larger pattern, a subtle but pervasive undercurrent of corruption that had been slowly poisoning Cedar Creek. Whispers of Donovan's protection racket circulated among the local business owners. A monthly visit, a thinly veiled threat, and a donation to ensure smooth operation. Those who refused found themselves facing increased scrutiny, code violations, and even fabricated complaints. Old Man Hemmings, owner of the local hardware store, once dared to question Donovan's methods. The next day, a health inspector descended upon his shop, citing a litany of minor infractions. The fines were hefty, almost crippling for the small business. Hemmings learned his lesson. Silence was the price of survival. The fear was palpable, a silent agreement to look the other way. Donovan's power stemmed not just from his badge, but from a network of complicity that surrounded him. Fellow officers turned a blind eye, their silence bought with favors or fear of reprisal. The system designed to protect had become a shield for the corrupt, a tool to maintain their grip on power. The town's sense of helplessness was profound. Who could they turn to when the very people meant to uphold the law were complicit in its violation? The seeds of distrust had been sown, not just in the police department, but in the community itself. The once unbreakable bonds of Cedar Creek were slowly fraying, replaced by a sense of suspicion and fear. Donovan's actions against Dr. Wright were not just an attack on an individual, but a calculated move to further solidify his control. By targeting a respected figure, he sent a clear message. No one was immune. The fear that had been simmering beneath the surface now boiled over, threatening to consume the town entirely. The arrest was swift and brutal. Donovan, with a theatrical flourish, recited the Miranda rights, his voice dripping with false formality. The handcuffs, cold and constricting, bit into Dr. Wright's wrists, a physical manifestation of the power that had been turned against her. The walk to the patrol car, usually a mundane occurrence in Cedar Creek, became a public spectacle, a moment of profound humiliation. Neighbors watched from their porches, their faces etched with disbelief and growing concern. Mrs. Henderson, her hands trembling, could only whisper, "This can't be happening." Children, who had once looked up to Dr. Wright with admiration, now stared with wide, confused eyes. The scene was a stark violation of their sense of normalcy, a shattering of the illusion that Cedar Creek was a safe haven. At the police station, the atmosphere was sterile and impersonal. The fluorescent lights cast a harsh glare, illuminating the cold, unyielding surfaces. The booking process was a series of dehumanizing procedures, each step designed to strip Dr. Wright of her dignity. Her fingerprints, her mugshot, her personal belongings cataloged and confiscated, all served to reinforce the power imbalance. Dr. Wright felt a profound sense of betrayal. She had dedicated her life to serving her community, to healing and caring for others. Now, she was treated like a common criminal, her reputation tarnished, her integrity questioned. The weight of the accusations, the knowledge that she had been framed, was a heavy burden. But even in the face of this injustice, she maintained her composure, her eyes reflecting a quiet strength. The feeling of betrayal was not just from Donovan's direct actions, but the system that allowed him to act with impunity. The silent complicity of the other officers, the unspoken acceptance of Donovan's methods, was a wound as deep as the false accusations themselves. She remembered the faces of the people she'd helped, the countless acts of kindness she'd performed, and the contrast between that life and her current situation was a painful, sharp reality. She felt alone, but her spirit was not broken. Alex Wright, Dr. Wright's son, was a man forged in the crucible of conflict. His military career was a testament to his exceptional skills and unwavering resolve. Known within elite circles as Spectre, he was a figure of quiet efficiency, a master of strategic thinking and tactical execution. His training was rigorous, pushing him beyond the limits of human endurance. He excelled in covert operations, intelligence gathering, and close-quarters combat. The military had honed his instincts, sharpened his senses, and instilled in him a deep sense of discipline. Flashbacks flickered through his mind. The grueling training exercises, the simulated combat scenarios, the endless hours spent mastering the art of observation and analysis. His instructors had drilled into him the importance of situational awareness, of anticipating threats, of remaining calm under pressure. He was a weapon, finely tuned and precisely calibrated. But beneath the hardened exterior, there was a deep well of love and loyalty. His relationship with his mother was the anchor of his life. They shared a bond that transcended words, a connection built on mutual respect and unwavering support. Dr. Wright had always been his guiding light, his source of strength. Her kindness, her compassion, her unwavering belief in justice had shaped him into the man he was. The news of his mother's arrest hit him like a physical blow. A wave of disbelief, followed by a surge of white-hot anger, washed over him. He knew his mother. He knew her character, her integrity. The accusations were preposterous, a blatant attempt to destroy her reputation. He felt a cold, hard resolve settle within him. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. His military training kicked in, his mind racing, analyzing the situation, formulating a plan. He knew that this was not a simple case of mistaken identity. This was something deeper, something more sinister. He would use every skill he possessed, every resource at his disposal, to expose the corruption that had taken hold in Cedar Creek. He remembered her voice, calm and reassuring, even when he was a troubled teen. Her words of wisdom, her unwavering belief in his abilities, had guided him through the darkest of times. Now, it was his turn to be her strength, her protector. He felt the fire of determination burning within him, a promise to his mother, a vow to see justice served. He would find the truth, and he would make those responsible pay. Alex arrived in Cedar Creek under the cloak of quiet observation. He wasn't a returning hero, but a shadow, a presence that moved unnoticed. His demeanor was calm, his eyes scanning the familiar streets with a critical eye. The town he remembered, the place of warmth and community, felt different, tainted. A subtle tension hung in the air, a sense of unease that was almost palpable. He moved through the town, observing the reactions of the people he encountered. The greetings were strained, the smiles forced. He sensed a fear, a hesitation, in their eyes. He asked casual questions, seeking information, but the responses were guarded, the words carefully chosen. He was met with subtle avoidance. The townspeople that once were so open and friendly now held back and were reserved. He made his way to the police station, a low, nondescript building that now held a sinister significance. He observed the officers, their interactions, their body language. There was an air of arrogance, a sense of impunity in their movements. He noticed the way they looked at him, a mix of suspicion and dismissal. He saw the subtle nods, the hushed conversations, the unspoken language of complicity. He watched Donovan, in particular his movements, his interactions with the other officers. There was a swagger in his step, a sense of unchallenged authority. Alex noticed the way Donovan carried himself, the subtle cues that betrayed his arrogance and his belief that he was untouchable. Alex's instincts, honed by years of military training, screamed that something was deeply wrong. The town's atmosphere, the behavior of the police, the fear in the eyes of the residents, it all pointed to a deeper conspiracy. He began to piece together the fragments of information, the subtle hints, the unspoken truths. He knew that this was not just about his mother. This was about power, about control, about a corruption that had spread like a cancer through the heart of Cedar Creek. He needed to gather more information, to understand the extent of the corruption, to identify the players. He would move slowly, deliberately, like a predator stalking its prey. He would observe, analyze, and strike when the time was right. He would use his training, his skills, his unwavering resolve to expose the truth and bring justice to his mother and to the town she loved. The visiting room at the county jail was a sterile, depressing space. The harsh fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a cold, impersonal light on the worn furniture and chipped paint. Alex sat across from his mother, a thick pane of glass separating them. Seeing her there, in an orange jumpsuit, her usually vibrant spirit dimmed by the oppressive surroundings, ignited a fierce protectiveness within him. Dr. Wright, despite the ordeal, maintained a remarkable composure. Her eyes, though filled with a deep sadness, still held a spark of defiance. "Alex," she said, her voice betraying a hint of vulnerability, "I can't believe this is happening." "I know, Mom," Alex said, his voice low and reassuring. "But I'm here now. We'll get through this." He listened intently as she recounted the events leading up to her arrest, the fabricated accusations, the planted evidence, the blatant abuse of power. He observed her closely, noting the subtle tremors in her hands, the fleeting moments of fear that flickered across her face. He saw the toll that this ordeal had taken on her, the weight of injustice she carried. "He wants money, Alex," Dr. Wright said, her voice filled with disgust. "Donovan. He's running some kind of protection racket, extorting money from local businesses. He tried to intimidate me, but I refused." Alex's grip tightened on the edge of the table. He had suspected as much, but hearing his mother confirm it fueled his anger. He would make Donovan pay for what he had done, not just to his mother, but to the entire town. "Don't worry, Mom," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to expose Donovan and his cronies, and I'm going to clear your name." Dr. Wright reached out, her fingers pressing against the cold glass. "Be careful, Alex," she said, her voice laced with concern. "These people are dangerous." "I will, Mom," he said, meeting her gaze with unwavering determination. "I promise." As he left the jail, Alex's mind was racing. He had a plan forming, a strategy to take down Donovan and his network of corruption. He would use his skills, his training, and his unwavering love for his mother to dismantle the web of lies and deceit that had ensnared Cedar Creek. This was more than just a personal vendetta. It was a fight for justice, a battle to restore the soul of his hometown. Alex, a phantom in his own town, moved with the preternatural grace of a man who had spent years mastering the art of invisibility. His military training had transformed him into a human chameleon, capable of blending seamlessly into any environment, his presence unnoticed, his movements a whisper in the wind. Cedar Creek, once a place of comfort and familiarity, now became his operational theater, a landscape of secrets and shadows. But Alex knew that he couldn't do this alone. The conspiracy was too vast, the players too powerful, the risks too great. He needed reinforcements, a team of trusted allies who shared his commitment to justice and his willingness to fight for what was right. He reached out to his network of contacts, former comrades from his military days, individuals with specialized skills and unwavering loyalty. Among those who answered his call were Sarah, a master of disguise and infiltration, whose ability to blend into any crowd was unmatched. Marcus, a tech wizard with a knack for cracking codes and bypassing security systems. And Ben, a former Special Forces medic with a cool head and a steady hand in high-pressure situations. They arrived in Cedar Creek under the cover of darkness, their presence a secret known only to Alex. Together, they formed a formidable team, each member bringing their unique skills and experience to the table. They established a secure base of operations in a secluded cabin on the outskirts of town, a place where they could strategize, analyze intelligence, and prepare for their missions. Alex's initial objective was to establish a comprehensive surveillance network, a digital web that would capture the movements of Donovan and his associates. He began by meticulously selecting locations for his hidden cameras, prioritizing areas frequented by his targets. He disguised these miniature recording devices as innocuous objects: a birdhouse perched on a telephone pole overlooking the police station, a seemingly abandoned toolbox nestled beneath a bush near Donovan's favorite bar, a loose brick in the wall of a restaurant suspected of being a front for the protection racket. Each camera, equipped with motion sensors, night vision capabilities, and long-life batteries, became a silent sentinel, transmitting a constant stream of footage to a secure server hidden deep within the network. To augment his ground-level surveillance, Alex deployed a fleet of miniature drones, each one a technological marvel of miniaturization and stealth. These silent guardians patrolled the skies above Cedar Creek, their high-resolution cameras capturing a panoramic view of the town's activities. Alex, a master of aerial reconnaissance, meticulously analyzed the drone footage, identifying patterns of movement, tracking vehicles, and mapping the connections between Donovan's various operations. He noted the late-night visits to secluded warehouses, the clandestine meetings in darkened alleyways, the suspicious exchanges in the parking lots of seemingly legitimate businesses. While Alex focused on surveillance and intelligence gathering, Sarah used her skills to infiltrate Donovan's inner circle. She assumed various identities, posing as a waitress at his favorite bar, a volunteer at a local charity event, and even a potential romantic interest. She gathered valuable information about Donovan's habits, his associates, and his plans. Marcus, meanwhile, was busy cracking the codes and bypassing the security systems that protected Donovan's digital empire. He gained access to bank accounts, email accounts, and social media profiles, uncovering a wealth of incriminating evidence. One night, Alex's investigation led him to a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of town, a nondescript building that masked its sinister purpose. He suspected that this was a key hub for the drug trafficking operation, a place where shipments were received, processed, and distributed. He decided to infiltrate the warehouse, but this time, he wasn't alone. He brought Sarah and Ben with him, their combined skills providing an extra layer of protection and expertise. They bypassed the security cameras, picked the locks, and slipped through the shadows, a team of ghosts moving through the heart of the enemy's territory. The warehouse was a hive of activity. Crates filled with drugs were stacked high, their content a testament to the scale of the operation. Stacks of cash, bound with rubber bands, lay scattered on tables, the scent of illicit money heavy in the air. Weapons, from handguns to assault rifles, were leaned against the walls, a silent reminder of the violence that underpinned the enterprise. Alex, Sarah, and Ben worked quickly and efficiently, documenting everything, taking photographs, recording videos, and gathering physical evidence. Marcus, working remotely, guided them through the network, helping them access the computers, download data from the servers, and extract information from the surveillance systems. As they were preparing to leave, They heard the distant rumble of approaching vehicles. They quickly concealed themselves in the shadows, their hearts pounding in their chests. They watched as two black SUVs pulled up, their headlights cutting through the darkness. Donovan emerged from one of the vehicles, followed by several heavily armed men. They entered the warehouse, their voices echoing in the vast space. Alex, Sarah, and Ben held their breath, their bodies tense, their minds racing. They waited, their senses on high alert, until they left, then slipped out of the warehouse, undetected. The close call was a stark reminder of the dangers they faced. They were playing a dangerous game, and the stakes were high, but they were not deterred. They were driven by an unyielding sense of justice, a fierce determination to protect Dr. Wright and expose the truth. They would continue their investigation, no matter the risks. They would unravel the web of corruption, even if it meant putting their own lives on the line. Alex's investigation had cracked open a hornet's nest. What he initially believed to be localized corruption was, in reality, a tentacle of a monstrous entity. Donovan wasn't just a dirty cop. He was a puppet dancing on the strings of a vast and ruthless cartel, its influence snaking through Cedar Creek like a venomous vine. This wasn't just about drug money anymore. It was about power, control, and the exploitation of the innocent on a scale that chilled Alex to the bone. The cartel, known as Los Scorpions, the Scorpions, was a behemoth, its annual revenue exceeding that of many small nations. Their reach extended far beyond Cedar Creek, their network spanning continents, their tendrils embedded in governments, law enforcement agencies, and even legitimate businesses. They were a hydra, their heads numerous and venomous, their bodies a tangled mass of corruption and violence. In Cedar Creek, their presence was insidious, a cancer masked by a veneer of normalcy. They own a string of seemingly innocuous businesses, a chain of popular restaurants serving authentic Mexican cuisine, a construction company responsible for several major development projects, even the local bank where many residents held their life savings. These businesses weren't just fronts for money laundering. They were strategic assets, providing cover for their illicit activities, generating revenue, and extending their influence into the heart of the community. But the cartel's most lucrative and depraved enterprise was human trafficking. They preyed on the vulnerable, the desperate, the marginalized. Young women, lured by promises of modeling contracts or lucrative jobs abroad, found themselves trapped in a nightmare of sexual exploitation and forced labor. Children, snatched from their families or orphaned by circumstance, were sold into a life of servitude and abuse. The cartel treated these human beings as mere commodities, their lives disposable, their suffering inconsequential. Alex discovered that Donovan was a key cog in this monstrous machine. He wasn't just providing protection and intelligence. He was actively facilitating the cartel's operations in Cedar Creek. He arranged for the transportation of drugs and human beings, ensured the smooth flow of money through the laundering network, and silenced anyone who threatened to expose their activities. He met regularly with high-ranking cartel members, their clandestine encounters taking place in secluded locations, their conversations a chilling testament to the depth of their collaboration. One rainy night, Alex and his team followed Donovan to a remote hunting cabin nestled deep in the woods. The cabin, isolated and unassuming, was a perfect location for clandestine meetings. They set up surveillance, their cameras capturing the arrival of a convoy of black SUVs, their windows tinted, their license plates obscured. Donovan emerged from one of the vehicles, followed by several heavily armed men, their faces obscured by masks, their bodies radiating menace. A tall, imposing figure, with a shaved head and a goatee, stepped out of the lead SUV. This was El Serpiente, the regional head of Los Scorpions, a man whose reputation preceded him. He was known for his ruthlessness, his cunning, and his penchant for violence. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the surroundings, taking in every detail. The meeting took place inside the cabin, the windows blacked out, the doors guarded by armed men. Alex and his team, utilizing their technological expertise, managed to intercept the audio feed from a hidden microphone planted by Sarah during a previous encounter. They huddled around a laptop in their surveillance van, their faces illuminated by the screen's glow, their expressions grim as they listened to the conversation unfolding inside the cabin. Donovan's voice was obsequious, his tone deferential as he addressed El Serpiente. He reported on the progress of their operations, the successful shipment of a large consignment of drugs, the acquisition of a new safe house for the human trafficking victims, the silencing of a local journalist who had been sniffing around. El Serpiente's voice was deep and gravelly, his words laced with menace. He expressed his satisfaction with Donovan's performance, but also issued a stern warning. The authorities were becoming increasingly suspicious. The FBI was sniffing around, and they needed to be more cautious. He spoke of expanding their operations, of increasing the flow of drugs and human beings through Cedar Creek, of consolidating their power and eliminating any potential threats. Alex and his team listened in horror, their blood running cold as they grasped the full extent of the cartel's depravity. They realized that they were facing an enemy that was not only powerful and ruthless, but also deeply entrenched in the fabric of their community. This wasn't just about rescuing his mother anymore. It was about saving Cedar Creek from the clutches of a monster. The clock was ticking. Alex felt the pressure mounting, the urgency growing with each passing day. The cartel's grip on Cedar Creek was tightening, their operations becoming bolder, their influence more pervasive. He knew that time was running out, that he had to strike a decisive blow before the town was consumed by the darkness. He and his team worked tirelessly, their days and nights blurring into a relentless pursuit of justice. They operated on multiple fronts, their actions a carefully orchestrated symphony of covert operations. Marcus, the digital maestro, delved deeper into the cartel's financial network, tracing the flow of money, identifying shell corporations, and uncovering offshore accounts. He discovered that the cartel's wealth was staggering, their annual revenue exceeding that of many small nations. They had amassed a fortune through their illicit activities, their tentacles reaching into every corner of the global economy. Sarah, the chameleon, continued her delicate dance within Donovan's inner circle. She played the role of the confidant, the lover, the trusted advisor, extracting information with subtle charm and calculated manipulation. She learned about Donovan's past, his childhood traumas, his deep-seated insecurities. She discovered that he was a man driven by a thirst for power and recognition, his loyalty to the cartel a twisted manifestation of his own unfulfilled ambitions. Alex, with Ben's unwavering support, focused on the human trafficking operation. They followed leads, interviewed witnesses, and infiltrated safe houses, their hearts breaking with each encounter, their resolve hardening with every victim they rescued. They saw the physical and emotional scars inflicted on innocent lives, the shattered dreams, the stolen childhoods. They vowed to bring the perpetrators to justice, to dismantle the network of exploitation, and to offer a glimmer of hope to those who had been robbed of their dignity and freedom. One night, acting on a tip from Sarah, Alex and Ben infiltrated a secluded ranch on the outskirts of town. The ranch, sprawling and well-guarded, was a hub for the cartel's human trafficking operation. Victims, mostly young women and children, were held captive in a network of hidden bunkers, their movements restricted, their spirits broken. Alex and Ben moved through the shadows, their senses heightened, their every movement calculated. They bypassed security cameras, disabled alarms, and neutralized guards, their training and experience guiding their actions. They reached the bunkers, their hearts pounding with anticipation and dread. They breached the doors, their weapons drawn, their voices echoing in the confined space. The scene that unfolded before them was one of unimaginable horror. Young women, huddled together in fear, their bodies bearing the marks of abuse and neglect. Children, their eyes wide with terror, their innocence stolen. Alex and Ben felt a surge of rage and compassion, their determination to rescue these victims burning with renewed intensity. They moved swiftly, efficiently, their actions a blur of controlled chaos. They subdued the guards, secured the perimeter, and began the process of evacuating the victims. They worked with a sense of urgency, knowing that time was of the essence, that the cartel's reinforcements could arrive at any moment. As they led the victims to safety, Alex felt a profound sense of purpose. This was what he was meant to do, what he had been trained for. He was a protector, a guardian, a shield against the darkness. He would not rest until he had brought down the cartel, rescued all of their victims, and restored peace to Cedar Creek. The escape from the ranch was a harrowing ordeal. Alex and Ben, with the rescued victims in tow, had to navigate a gauntlet of armed guards, security systems, and treacherous terrain. They moved under the cover of darkness, their senses heightened, their every step a calculated risk. They encountered resistance, but their training and experience prevailed. They fought their way through, their weapons blazing, their determination unwavering. They reached the rendezvous point, where Sarah was waiting with a convoy of vehicles. The victims were loaded into the vehicles, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and relief. As they drove away from the ranch, Alex looked back at the burning building, a symbol of the cartel's reign of terror. He knew that this was just one battle in a larger war, but it was a victory nonetheless. He had saved lives, offered hope, and struck a blow against the darkness that threatened to consume his town. But the fight was far from over. The cartel would retaliate, their vengeance swift and brutal. Alex and his team had to stay one step ahead, their actions unpredictable, their movements clandestine. They returned to their safe house, their bodies exhausted, their minds racing. They needed to regroup, reassess, and plan their next move. Alex contacted Agent Davis, the FBI agent he had reached out to earlier. He shared the details of the ranch raid, the evidence they had gathered, the horrors they had witnessed. Agent Davis was impressed by their bravery and resourcefulness, but also cautioned them against further action. The cartel was a formidable opponent, their reach extending far beyond Cedar Creek. He advised Alex to step back, to let the FBI handle the investigation, to protect himself and his team. But Alex couldn't stand idly by while his town was being ravaged by the cartel. He had a personal stake in this fight, a duty to his mother, to his community, to himself. He respectfully declined Agent Davis's offer, assuring him that he and his team would continue their covert operation, gathering more evidence, disrupting the cartel's activities, and rescuing victims. Agent Davis, though concerned for their safety, recognized the fire in Alex's eyes, the unwavering determination that drove him. He reluctantly agreed to provide them with limited support, access to certain databases, and a direct line of communication in case of emergency. He warned them to be careful, to avoid direct confrontation with the cartel, and to trust no one. Alex and his team pressed on, their investigation expanding, their network of allies growing. They recruited informants within the police department, the local government, and even the cartel itself. They discovered that the cartel's influence was more pervasive than they had imagined, their tentacles reaching into every aspect of Cedar Creek's life. They learned about corrupt officials, compromised businesses, and silenced witnesses. They uncovered a web of deceit, betrayal, and violence that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their community. They faced numerous challenges, close calls, and moments of despair. They were pursued by the cartel's enforcers, their safe house compromised, their lives threatened. But they persevered, their determination fueled by a sense of justice, a love for their town, and an unwavering belief in the power of truth. The tension in Cedar Creek was palpable, a thick blanket of fear and uncertainty smothering the once peaceful town. The revelations of corruption, the cartel's violent response, and the escalating conflict had shattered the illusion of safety, leaving the residents feeling vulnerable and exposed. Alex, watching the chaos unfold, knew he needed to regain control of the narrative. The cartel thrived in the shadows, their power amplified by fear and misinformation. It was time to shine a light on their operations, to expose their secrets, and to empower the community to fight back. He reached out to the people of Cedar Creek, utilizing social media, local forums, and even clandestine meetings to spread the truth. He shared evidence of the cartel's crimes, the corruption that had infected their institutions, and the human suffering that fueled their greed. He called on the community to stand together, to resist the cartel's influence, and to demand justice. "What would you do?" he asked in a viral video message, "if you discovered your community was being controlled by a corrupt network? Would you cower in fear, or would you rise up and fight back? Share your thoughts, your stories, your outrage. Let your voices be heard. Together, we can reclaim our town, our lives, our future." The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life, from shopkeepers to teachers, from farmers to retirees, shared their experiences, their fears, their hopes. They expressed their anger at the betrayal of trust, their frustration with the slow pace of justice, and their determination to reclaim their community. Have you ever had a feeling that something was wrong, even when you didn't have proof? Alex asked in another message, "How important is trust in your community? We need to rebuild that trust, to stand together, to support each other. We need to believe in ourselves, in our collective power to overcome this darkness." The groundswell of support was a beacon of hope in the midst of the storm. It gave Alex and his team renewed strength, a sense of purpose that transcended their personal struggles. They were not just fighting for their own freedom, but for the freedom of their community, for the future of Cedar Creek. And then a breakthrough. Marcus, tirelessly sifting through the digital debris of the cartel's network, stumbled upon a hidden folder, encrypted and password protected. He worked feverishly, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his mind racing to crack the code. After hours of intense effort, he succeeded, the folder unlocking its secrets. Inside, he found a treasure trove of information, detailed records of the cartel's operations, financial transactions, meeting minutes, and even personal correspondence between El Serpiente and a high-ranking government official. The official, a senator with a reputation for integrity and public service, was revealed to be a key player in the cartel's network, providing them with political protection, legislative influence, and access to sensitive information. The revelation was a bombshell, a game-changer that exposed the true depth and breadth of the conspiracy. It was the missing piece of the puzzle, the key that unlocked the door to justice. Alex knew that he had to get this information to Agent Davis, to the FBI, to the world. But he also knew that he was being watched, that the cartel was closing in, that his every move was being tracked. One evening, as he was preparing to meet with Agent Davis, Alex sensed danger. He noticed a black SUV parked across the street, its windows tinted, its engine idling. He saw a figure lurking in the shadows, his face obscured by a hoodie, his hand resting on a bulge beneath his jacket. Alex's instinct screamed at him, his body tensing, his mind racing. He knew that he was walking into a trap. The noose was tightening around Donovan's neck. Each leak, each whispered rumor, each probing question from the FBI chipped away at his carefully constructed facade. He was a cornered animal, fear replacing arrogance, desperation replacing control. The once cocky swagger was gone, replaced by a frantic, almost twitchy energy that betrayed his crumbling composure. Sleep became a luxury he couldn't afford, his nights plagued by nightmares of exposure and ruin. The bottle, once a casual indulgence, became his constant companion, the burning liquor a temporary anesthetic to the gnawing anxiety. His temper, always short, became explosive, his rage erupting at the slightest provocation. His wife, once a silent witness to his misdeeds, now cowered in fear, her eyes reflecting the terror she saw in her husband. Donovan's attempts to cover his tracks became increasingly frantic and sloppy. He shredded documents in a frenzy, leaving a trail of incriminating confetti in his wake. He scrubbed his computer's hard drive, oblivious to the digital footprints he left behind. He threatened witnesses, his voice trembling with barely contained rage, his eyes betraying the fear that consumed him. He tried to frame Alex, planting evidence, fabricating stories, whispering lies to anyone who would listen. He painted Alex as a mentally unstable veteran, a loose cannon with a grudge against the police, a danger to the community. But his efforts were clumsy, his lies transparent, his desperation palpable. The attacks on Alex escalated. It started with a brick hurled through the window of his mother's house, a crude message scrawled on the wall, back OFF. Then came the car bomb, a sophisticated device planted beneath Alex's truck, detonating with a deafening roar just moments after he stepped away. The explosion ripped through the night, shattering windows, setting off car alarms, and sending shockwaves of fear through the community. Alex, shaken but unharmed, knew that Donovan was playing for keeps. He and his team went into hiding, moving from one safe house to another, their movements unpredictable, their communication encrypted. They became phantoms, their presence felt but rarely seen, their actions a whisper in the wind. Donovan, obsessed with eliminating Alex, became a hunter, his prey a ghost that haunted his every waking moment. He led raids on suspected hideouts, his men crashing through doors, guns drawn, adrenaline pumping. He interrogated informants, his voice a guttural growl, his threats laced with violence. He scoured surveillance footage, his eyes bloodshot, his mind consumed by the chase. One rainy night, acting on a tip from a paid informant, Donovan tracked Alex to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. He assembled a team of his most trusted men, heavily armed and eager to prove their loyalty. They surrounded the factory, their shadows merging with the darkness, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Donovan, his heart pounding with anticipation, led the assault. They stormed the factory, their boots echoing on the concrete floor, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. They encountered resistance, a hail of gunfire erupting from the shadows, forcing them to take cover. A fierce firefight ensued, bullets ricocheting off the walls, the air thick with the smell of gunpowder and fear. Alex and his team, outnumbered but not outgunned, fought back with precision and determination. They moved through the labyrinthine corridors, their movements fluid, their aim true. They utilized their knowledge of the terrain, their tactical skills honed by years of training, to outmaneuver and outgun their opponents. Donovan, enraged by their resistance, pushed forward, his gun blazing, his voice a roar of fury. He cornered Alex in a darkened room, their eyes locking in a silent duel of wills. Donovan lunged, his fist connecting with Alex's jaw, sending him reeling. Alex countered with a swift kick to Donovan's knee, buckling him to the ground. They grappled, their bodies intertwined, their breaths ragged, their muscles straining. Donovan, fueled by desperation, fought with animalistic ferocity, his punches wild, his kicks vicious. Alex, relying on his training and discipline, countered with controlled aggression, his movements precise, his strikes aimed to disable. The fight raged on, the room a whirlwind of violence, the air thick with tension. In the end, it was Alex's superior skill and endurance that prevailed. He disarmed Donovan, subdued him, and held him captive, his knee pressing into Donovan's back, his gun pointed at his head. "It's over, Donovan," Alex said, his voice cold and hard. "Your reign of terror is over." Part 14. The FBI investigation expanded. Agent Davis, despite his initial reservations, found himself increasingly drawn into the vortex of Cedar Creek's corruption. Alex's relentless pursuit of justice, his meticulous gathering of evidence, and his unwavering determination had ignited a spark of admiration in the seasoned FBI agent. He saw in Alex a reflection of his younger self, the idealistic agent who had joined the Bureau with a burning desire to make a difference. The information Alex provided was a goldmine, a roadmap through the labyrinth of the cartel's operations. Davis assembled a task force, a team of seasoned investigators, forensic specialists, and surveillance experts. They descended upon Cedar Creek, their presence a subtle but undeniable shift in the balance of power. They started by interviewing the local residents, their questions probing, their eyes searching for inconsistencies and hidden truths. They spoke to shopkeepers who had been forced to pay protection money, to families whose loved ones had been victimized by the cartel's human trafficking network, to witnesses who had seen Donovan and his men engaging in illegal activities. The interviews painted a grim picture, a portrait of a community held hostage by fear and corruption. The residents, once trusting and open, now spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously, their words carefully chosen. They revealed a pattern of intimidation, bribery, and violence, a system of control that had permeated every aspect of their lives. The FBI agents, hardened by years of experience, were shocked by the extent of the corruption, the brazenness of the cartel's operations, and the vulnerability of the community. They realized that they were facing a formidable enemy, one that had infiltrated the highest levels of power and was willing to use any means necessary to maintain its grip. They expanded their investigation, their focus shifting from Donovan to the larger network of corruption. They subpoenaed financial records, tapped phone lines, and conducted surveillance operations. They followed leads, interviewed suspects, and executed search warrants. They uncovered a web of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and illicit transactions, tracing the flow of money from the streets of Cedar Creek to the coffers of the cartel. They discovered that the cartel's influence extended far beyond the town's borders, reaching into the state capitol, the corridors of power in Washington, D.C., and even across international borders. They uncovered connections to corrupt politicians, judges, and law enforcement officials, a network of protection that shielded the cartel from scrutiny and prosecution. The investigation intensified, the pressure mounting on the cartel and its collaborators. The FBI, working in close collaboration with Alex and his team, gathered more evidence, closed in on key players, and disrupted the cartel's operations. They raided safe houses, seized drugs and weapons, and rescued victims. They built a case, brick by brick, document by document, testimony by testimony, a case that would expose the cartel's crimes and bring its perpetrators to justice. The climax of the investigation came during a town council meeting, a public forum where the residents of Cedar Creek gathered to voice their concerns and demand answers. The meeting was packed, the atmosphere tense, the anticipation palpable. Alex, with Agent Davis's support, had orchestrated a dramatic reveal, a public exposure of Donovan's crimes and the cartel's influence. As Donovan addressed the crowd, his voice trembling with feigned confidence, his eyes darting nervously, Alex and his team activated their plan. Hidden cameras, strategically placed throughout the room, captured Donovan's every move, his every word, his every lie. Microphones, concealed in the rafters, transmitted his voice to a waiting audience outside, the sound amplified through loudspeakers, his deceit echoing through the streets of Cedar Creek. And then, the bombshell. Marcus, the digital maestro, hacked into the town's public address system, his fingers flying across the keyboard, his code unlocking the doors to the truth. He played the recordings, the incriminating conversations between Donovan and El Serpiente, the confessions of bribery, the threats of violence, the callous disregard for human life. The crowd erupted in outrage, their voices a chorus of anger and disbelief. Donovan, his face pale, his eyes wide with panic, tried to defend himself, but his words were drowned out by the roar of the crowd. He was exposed, his lies laid bare, his corruption undeniable. Agent Davis, flanked by a team of FBI agents, stepped forward, his badge glinting in the light, his voice commanding attention. "Donovan," he announced, "you are under arrest." The arrest was swift and decisive, the culmination of months of investigation, countless hours of surveillance, and unwavering determination. Donovan, his reign of terror over, was led away in handcuffs, his head bowed in shame, his future uncertain. The town council meeting had become a crucible, the heat of revelation forging a new resolve in the people of Cedar Creek. Donovan's arrest was not just a symbolic victory. It was a turning point, a moment of reckoning that shattered the cartel's grip and ignited a flame of defiance in the hearts of the community. The atmosphere in the room was electric, charged with a mixture of anger, relief, and a thirst for justice. The residents, once silenced by fear, now found their voices, their words echoing with the power of collective outrage. They demanded answers, accountability, and a restoration of trust. Alex, standing at the back of the room, watched the scene unfold with a sense of satisfaction and vindication. He had risked everything, sacrificed his privacy, his safety, his peace of mind, to expose the truth and bring down the corrupt forces that had plagued his town. He had faced danger, endured hardship, and overcome adversity, but he had never wavered in his commitment to justice. As the FBI agents led Donovan away, a hush fell over the crowd. Then, a spontaneous eruption of applause, cheers, and whistles filled the room, a collective exhale of relief and celebration. People hugged each other, tears streaming down their faces, their voices choked with emotion. They had witnessed a victory, a triumph of good over evil, a testament to the power of courage and determination. But the fight was not over yet. Donovan's arrest was just the first step in a long and arduous process of healing and rebuilding. The cartel's network was vast, its tentacles reaching deep into the institutions of power. There were still corrupt officials to be exposed, criminal enterprises to be dismantled, and victims to be rescued. Alex, with his team by his side, vowed to continue the fight. They would not rest until they had eradicated the cartel's influence, restored justice to Cedar Creek, and ensured the safety and well-being of its residents. But first, there was one more confrontation, one final showdown that had been brewing since the moment Alex had returned to his hometown. He knew that Donovan, despite his arrest, still posed a threat, his desperation fueled by a desire for revenge and a fear of imprisonment. Alex tracked Donovan to a secluded cabin in the woods, the same cabin where he had met with El Serpiente. He arrived under the cover of darkness, his movements silent, his presence undetected. He entered the cabin, his weapon drawn, his senses heightened. He found Donovan sitting in a chair, his face haggard, his eyes bloodshot, a bottle of whiskey clutched in his hand. He looked up as Alex entered, his expression a mixture of defiance and despair. "You ruined me," Donovan said, his voice hoarse, his words slurred. "You took everything from me." "You ruined yourself, Donovan," Alex replied, his voice calm and steady. "You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." "It's not fair," Donovan said, his voice rising in anger. "I was just trying to make a better life for myself, for my family. I didn't deserve this." "You didn't deserve the power you abused," Alex said. "You didn't deserve the trust you betrayed. You didn't deserve the lives you destroyed." Donovan lunged at Alex, his fist connecting with his jaw, sending him reeling. Alex countered with a swift kick to Donovan's knee, buckling him to the ground. They grappled, their bodies intertwined, their breaths ragged, their muscles straining. The fight was brief but intense, a culmination of months of animosity, betrayal, and violence. In the end, it was Alex's superior skill and training that prevailed. He disarmed Donovan, subdued him, and held him captive, his knee pressing into Donovan's back, his gun pointed at his head. "It's over, Donovan," Alex said, his voice cold and hard. "Your reign of terror is over. Justice has been served." As the sirens wailed in the distance, Alex looked at Donovan, his face bruised, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hatred. He saw a man broken by his own corruption, his life a testament to the destructive power of greed and ambition. He felt a pang of pity, but also a sense of closure. He had fulfilled his mission, protected his family, and defended his community. He had done what he had to do, what he was trained to do, what he was born to do. With Donovan behind bars and his network crumbling, a wave of relief washed over Cedar Creek. The dark clouds of fear and suspicion that had shrouded the town began to dissipate, replaced by a tentative sense of hope and renewal. Dr. Wright's name was cleared, the false charges dropped, her reputation restored. She returned to the hospital, welcomed back by her colleagues and patients with open arms and heartfelt gratitude. The community rallied around her, their support a testament to the deep respect and affection they held for their beloved doctor. The town council, purged of corrupt officials, embarked on a process of reform, implementing measures to increase transparency, accountability, and public participation in local government. They established a citizen review board to oversee the police department, ensuring that the abuses of power that had plagued Cedar Creek would never happen again. The positive impact of Alex's actions was undeniable. He had not only exposed the corruption and brought the perpetrators to justice, but he had also inspired the community to reclaim their town, their lives, their future. He had shown them that even in the darkest of times, one person can make a difference, that courage and determination can overcome fear and oppression. Alex, his mission accomplished, prepared to depart. He had fulfilled his promise to his mother, protected his community, and honored the memory of his father. He had found a sense of purpose, a renewed sense of belonging, and a deeper understanding of himself. He said his goodbyes, his heart filled with gratitude for the friends he had made, the bonds he had forged, and the experiences he had shared. He embraced his mother, their eyes locking in a silent exchange of love and understanding. He thanked his team, their camaraderie and support having been his lifeline through the darkest hours. He left Cedar Creek with a sense of peace and accomplishment, his legacy etched in the annals of the town's history. He would always be remembered as the protector, the guardian, the one who had stood up to the darkness and brought light back to their lives. The town celebrated his departure with a farewell party, a joyous occasion filled with music, laughter, and heartfelt tributes. Dr. Wright, her voice filled with emotion, thanked Alex for his bravery, his sacrifice, and his unwavering commitment to justice. The residents, their faces beaming with gratitude, showered him with gifts, hugs, and well wishes. Alex, touched by their outpouring of affection, smiled and waved goodbye, his heart filled with a sense of fulfillment and belonging. He knew that he would always carry a piece of Cedar Creek with him, wherever his journey might lead. He returned to active duty, his skills and experience honed by his time in Cedar Creek. He continued to serve his country, his dedication to justice unwavering, his commitment to protecting the innocent unyielding. He became a legend, a symbol of hope and inspiration, his name whispered in hushed tones by those who knew his story. And so, the story of Cedar Creek came to an end, a tale of corruption, redemption, and the enduring power of the human spirit. It was a story that reminded us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope, that even the smallest of voices can make a difference, and that the fight for justice is a fight worth fighting. What do you think is the most important element of justice? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Remember, even in the darkest of times, one person can make a difference. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out our other videos on the channel. We have a wide variety of content, from true crime documentaries to inspiring stories of courage and resilience. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.